Stanović je bio u timu koji je odlučivao, odnosno sve nas učio kako bi te stvari trebale da izgledaju i da se tu uspostavi neki red da bi one zaista funkcionisali. U momentima gdje smo ga slušali, tu smo dobri, gdje nismo dobri. Kada je profesor Radilja Škarovića, ako se naravno predsjednik savjeta Hrvatske kinoteke, profesor na Fakultetu pravosudnih umjetnosti, dekan Fakultetu pravosudnih umjetnosti, to je nešto što se tiče forme, a što se tiče našeg odnosa i suštine. Ja sam uz njega prvo postavljao kablove, na stetovima kuvao kafe i sve se to razvijalo do nivoa kad sam prvi put rekao kadar je kupljen. Tako da sam uz njega prošao kompletan proces i još to učenje nije se završilo. On će nam danas uraditi jedno predavanje šta se u principu dešava od ideje do potpune realizacije jednog kinematografskog projekta, je to filmski projekat ili festivalski ili neka druga forma i ja bih ga još jedan put pozdravio i dao mi riječ.
Hvala. Thank you for this welcoming introduction. I will speak today about one particular part of the film industry in the sense of the placement and distribution, which I found most important for the development of all aspects of the film industry, especially in the context of Montenegrin cinema. I am, as Daka said, the representative of, or the president of the films, president of the council of the Film Center of Montenegro, and this institution is a new one. It's established in 2017, and it has been a very important player in the terms of advocating film industry in Montenegro. But also, when we see the social cultural chain of the Montenegrin cinema, I will explain some of the parts that Daka mentioned in terms of the capacity of the industry. Creative industry as a term is regularly used in the sense that there is an industry behind it. But considering the fact that we are a small country, it's considerably questioned that there is any kind of industry. There is some part of the industry, but not the whole system, not the whole chain. But nevertheless, it's important to learn how the particular parts of this chain works, and hopefully I will manage to do it in, let's say, 40 minutes. As you can see here, I'm coming from University of Montenegro, which is a public one, and I'm the dean of the Faculty of Dramatic Arts, which is the only institution that produces education in this rather, to say, traditional form of arts. We are managing to have education in different aspects of the audiovisual industry, especially because we have a producers department, directors department for theater and television and film, and we have dramaturgy as a solid department, and we have acting. But today I will speak to you about some key elements in distribution putting the movie in theaters, and that's the basic definition that we start with. It's very important to reflect that we as a producers think about those two other forms or those two other aspects of the cinematography, meaning that if we as a school produce the people to make a movie, they have to have a knowledge about other aspects of the movie production. And that's the big differentiation between American cinema, which is more focused on distribution, than the European film, which is like oriented toward more the artistic approach. It's a pity that we still now today discuss this matter, because on the European context we don't think about movies in these terms. We don't think them in this particular direction, and that's the difficulties for us to understand that if we speak movies or if we talk about it, we don't talk about money. We talk about aesthetics, and that's the big issue in European and as well Montenegrin context and in regional context.
Alexandra, could you translate what the professor has just said? Because that's a major difference into Montenegro. Can you translate what the professor has just said? Exactly, that's the major difference in the two industries. Yeah, in Montenegro. Yeah.
Distribution is like real marketing of the movies, of the product. Because in that circumstance, in that point, only movie becomes a commodity. A product. In early stages of the development of the movie industry, there was no this kind of separation between the cinematography activities in terms of production, distribution, and then showing of the film. But after the First World War, we have this development in, let's so-called horizontal way. Including all the part of the industry which are very important. So in this slide you will see the particularities of every aspect of the whole cinematography activities. When we speak about social cultural chain or production chain, what they used as a term in USA, we don't just understand the complexity of these three polar stages of movie producing.
Ne razumemo kompleksnost te tri polarne faze u produkciji filma.
But we add complementary activities
Ali
as well,
dodajemo komplementarne događaje
which include all the aspects of the film production.
koji uključuju sve aspekte filmske produkcije.
Because if there is no education,
Zato što ako nema školovanja,
syndical organizations,
sindikalne organizacije,
film institutes,
filmski instituti,
festivals,
festivali
and publishing or advertising,
i izdavačka delatnost,
there is no full circle of the production chain.
nema cijelog kruga produkcije.
I have a question. How much this company, because we all know that the movie is starting the big industry, not just film industry, but it also depends on other industries. How much the government is aware in European countries, how much is aware of the movement and the financial impact that movie actually can make, not just to filmmakers, but also to other parts of the industries?
The policy in Europe becomes a public policy to support movies, especially in the European Union, considering the fact that there is a platform of Creative Europe dedicated in great quantities for the promotion and support of the audiovisual arts in total. So the awareness of the national government or the supranational government as the European Union nowadays is bigger and much greater because they have to follow the principles of USA cinema doctrine in terms that movies could be a great promoter of European Union and in particular countries. And that brings us in the new term. It's so-called co-production movie. There is no so much definition right now, which is very endangered, by the national film. There is no national films becoming important. Nowadays, the co-production is the main model of functioning, meaning that there is no French film anymore. There is no Montenegrin, solely Montenegrin, in the terms of the diversification of the budget coming to make a film. It's a very big issue and important question. Where have we lost national movies?
So do you consider then that United States movie is an advantage because that's a foreign capital?
It is an advantage in terms that the orientation of the thematic scope is different. Not just because I will explain what is a participative legislation means in the context of American cinema, and we will come to this point later. What they have been developing from the very beginnings of the making of this system of trust and then other aspects of the film industry.
Što su oni napravili od početka kasnih aspekta filmske industrije.
They understand the protocol of money, of the audience flow or the distribution flow.
Razumeli su protokol novca, publike i distribucije.
So there is some kind of key elements to support this second part, let's say distribution or plus man of the movie, which is very important.
Imaju neki ključni elementi da bi se podržao taj drugi deo filmske industrije.
Distribution.
Da bi se podržao.
And the first is thinking about the target audience.
Prvo je razmišljati o target publici.
What they think about when they create a movie is the target audience.
Što oni misle koja je ciljena publika?
To whom I'm speaking.
Kome je govorim?
And that's I will not go in the deeper points, but that's the main point. To whom I'm speaking with this movie, with this idea.
Neću zalaziti ovu temu, ali najbitnije kome ja pričam.
The positioning is a second key step in the distribution of the movie.
Pozicioniranje je druga ključna stvar u distribuciji.
And they regularly why American movie for us is a little bit strange, because it's oriented towards universal stories.
Zato su nama američki filmovi malo čudniji, zato što su posvećeni univerzalnom pričama.
And that's what gives them the better position in the first place.
A i to im daje bolju poziciju na prvom mjestu.
When they think about the movies and producing of the movies, they reflect only 3 to 5 years backwards.
Kad razmišljaju o filmovima ili produkciji filmovima, oni gledaju samo 3 do 5 godina unazad.
Because they know the resemblance of the understanding of the audience flow is different than in our countries.
Jer znaju da je protok publike drugačiji nego u našoj zemlji.
Because the industry is creating what is called economy of the content.
Zato što industrija pravi ono što se zove ekonomija obim.
Third, very important step in the placement of the movie, it's finding the market niche or market segment.
Treći mnogo bitan korak u filmu jeste naći market.
Because that becomes then very important for the genre development of the movie.
Jer onda postane dosta bitno za žanr filma.
Because in European cinema, you cannot see so much differentiation in genre. You will see just convergence within the genre, but not the genre per se.
Zato što u evropskom filmu nećemo vidjeti toliko raznolikost u žanru filma.
And within American cinema, it's very specific. You do action movie or you do horror movie, and you know by the first 3 minutes of the opening of the movie.
Jer u američkoj kinematografiji je veoma specifično, ili radiš horor, ili radiš akcijni film, i značiš prvih 3 minuta.
The release pattern is very important as well as a step in the terms, in the meaning that in the distribution
Izlazak filma je dosta bitan.
or model objavljivanja i promocije filma.
Model objavljivanja filma je dosta bitan u distribuciji.
What is the key model of the distribution is the most important question. What are you doing?
Koji je glavni model distribucije i najglavnije pitanje šta radiš?
There is one very important term. I will explain it later. It's called P&A. It means printanje i advertising.
There is one really, ima jedan veoma bitan termin, PAA, znači printanje i advertising.
To je zapravo, it is actually the terms that is used by the distributors of the movie.
Taj termin koriste distributori filma.
Because they include the price of the printing copy of the movie.
Jer uključuju u cenu
Kopiju filma, which is then will be put in the movie theater.
I koja će onda biti postavljena u muzičkim salama.
The fifth key element is the marketing strategy, what you choose.
Peti glavni element marketinška strategija, šta izabereš.
It could be paid driven, it could be promotional driven, and it could be publicity driven.
Može biti vođena plaćanja, promotivno vođenje i strategija.
It could be driven by the A-list actor, and then it's publicity driven strategy.
Može biti vođena glavnim glumcem koji je A-list.
If you have, let's say, Al Pacino, then this is publicity driven strategy.
Ako imate Al Pacino, to je strategija vođena glumca.
If you have unpromoted actors, directors or movie producers, then it will be promotional driven.
Ako imate glumci koji nisu poznati direktore, onda će biti promotivno
The
vođena.
two most important directions,
U dve najbitnije direkcije.
offline and so-called offline and online perspective.
Offline i online perspektive.
And you can see here on this it's just a resemblance how the movie functions, but it's not the real story.
To je samo plitka priča kako u stvari to prošlo i nije tako.
There is a lot of going on behind the box office.
A mnogo stvari se dešava iza toga.
And you can see here that there is a marketing strategy includes, let's say, 20% of the for the budget of production.
I možete vidjeti da recimo marketinška strategija sadrži 20%
50% of the sell tickets
50%
goes as a profit of distributors and sale agents.
ide kao profit distributora i agenta.
And it's very difficult to understand what goes where.
I veoma teško se izmeštaje gde.
If we go by this understanding of the greatest movie with the lifetime gross market,
Ako idemo po ovoj listi filmova koji su najgledaniji filmovi ikada,
you can see that Avatar, for example, in lifetime gross has revenue nearly to $3 billion.
možemo vidjeti da Avatar ima skoro da Avatar skoro zaradi 3 milijarde.
But it's a whole lifespan of the movie after the theater, after the showing of the movie in the movie theater.
Ali ovo je cijel život filma nakon prikazivanja u bioskopu.
So you can see these numbers and you can compare it with the initial price of the film cost.
Možemo vidjeti ove brojeve i uporediti sa inicijalnom cenom filma.
You can see that the Avengers are still on the top of the list.
Možete vidjeti da su Avengers jedni i dalje na kupu.
And here you can see approximate production budget.
I ovdje možete vidjeti koliki je produkcijski.
And you can see in first line that domestic growth meaning USA growth.
I možete vidjeti rast u koliko je zaradio.
And you can see the differentiation within the worldwide gross, which is very important for the overall distribution of the movie.
I možete vidjeti koliko je zaradio na celom svetu, što je veoma bitno za celu.
Because USA has 37,000 of the movie theaters only. That's a huge number.
Amerika ima 37.000 filmskih.
We still nowadays don't know how much the movie theaters there is in the whole world.
Ne znamo koliko ima filmskih sala na celom svetu.
But let's presume that seeing these numbers, it's a great number.
Ali pretpostavit ćemo kad vidimo ove brojeve da je veliki.
In this slide, you can see a very important thing in terms of making movie budgets.
Na ovom slajdu ćete vidjeti veoma bitnu stvar što se tiče financija filma.
You can see low-cost movie that earn $1 million and see the price. El Mariachi, for example.
Možete vidjeti filmove koji su imali malu budžetu su zaradili preko $1 milion. El Mariachi.
Cost $7,000 and it requires domestic growth around 2 million and worldwide growth, so 4 million for El Mariachi costing $7,000.
El Mariachi košta samo $7,000, a uspred zaradi 2 miliona.
Many of these movies you have seen as this on the 10th P, the 5. It cost $68,000 and acquires nearly 10 million euros or dollars.
Film koji možete vidjeti, taj košta 68.000, a zaradio je 10 miliona.
So, this extension, how the film could earn, is really realistic.
Ovo je realni prikaz kako film može zaraditi.
Here you can see most profitable movies based on absolute profit of the worldwide gross.
Ovdje možete vidjeti filmove, profit filmova na samom
based on the return of the investment in the... Okay, I'm sorry.
Ovdje možete vidjeti najbitnije filmove u smislu povratka investicije.
And you can see here the percentage. The most highest is at 24%.
Najveći procent povratka je 24%.
So it's very important to understand that you don't have to invest a huge money.
Veoma je bitno razumjeti da ne morate uložiti velike pare.
If the return on percentage could be done for a less money.
Ako povratak novca može da se desi za manje pare.
So the real example is the man next that we know, the first one, the first edition.
Pravi primjer toga je originalni Mad Max edicija.
Which cost, let's say, 49, which is production budget in $200,000.
Čiji produkcijski budžet je bio 200.000
And you can see here as well a paranormal activity, which is bad movie, but it has a great return of investment.
Možete otkriti koja je paranormalna aktivnost koja je loša, ali ima dobar povratak.
Paranormal activity is a very bad movie, yes.
Paranormalna aktivnost je veoma,
But it earns lots of money.
ali je zaradila mnogo para.
Recite, molim, što se dešava sa europskim filmom? It cannot compare with those prices.
European cinema is just start to make a quantification of this, just starting to get involved in the dynamics of this industry.
Evropski film je tek krenuo ulazi u ovu industriju.
There is one very important institution called European Audiovisual Observatory,
Ima jedna veoma bitna institucija koja se zove Evropska audiovizualna observatorija.
which follows these trends to see the monetization of the European Union.
Koja prati tada monetizaciju evropskih filmova.
Because in participative legislature, investors are thinking about the money, not the quality. They think only how to earn the money. They don't think about movie as an emotional thing.
And how much Euro-Image and maybe a fund are actually paying attention to how much we will earn after distribution? Do they pay that much attention to that, or they just help movies to get to the market level?
You mean European movie?
Yes, European movie. Can Euro-Image?
First thing, as well for the USA producers, it's hard to get in the level to be involved in the theater, in the movie theaters. In any case, to go above the line, it's very complicated because that is what is provided by the distributors. That is very hard to achieve. That's why the cost of the distribution is around 40% of the whole overall budget. Just because previously it was harder, nowadays it's easier because we have these multiplexes where you can send the movie by the electronics. But before it was harder, but we will speak about Netflix. How the Netflix overcome this issue and how it changed the whole industry model of functioning. For the European movies, there is a structure of theaters, and especially national structure that we have here. But the distributional aspect is covered by the majors in the terms of covering the area, because, and it's very complicated, because if you want to make a distribution for the American film coming to Europe, you have to translate it in at least in 30 languages, and it's very costly. Some countries are doing voiceovers, some countries just doing subtitles. It's very complicated, but for the China, for the so-called emitting territories, it's a different story because there is a lot of payers going to the theater. So it's different kind of an approach. And this is called buying the option, distributor's option. You buy the distributor's option to spread your movie within the certain territory. For example, ex-Yugoslavian places are divided between the distributors coming from Serbia and Croatia, and they separate their own lands and they cover the area. Nobody could enter in this. That's why we, as a small country, it's hard for us to have distributors. In my past living time, in my city, I have organized in Bar, on television and film festival, what is called content providing market. And that content providing market, I bring all the distributors from ex-Yugoslavian places to sell and advertise the content. And we have a position there. We have bought some of the local TV stations bought a series from Turkey, and it cost, let's say, 50,000 euros to buy this. But our mistake, government mistake as the organizer of this content providing market, was that we didn't have a percentage because we acquired as a facilitator all the aspects to make this purchase. We didn't take nothing. But in developed systems, those intermediate facilitators, they take the money. And that brings the system. But of course, we have lost it. After the separation of Yugoslavia, we have lost our distributors in Montenegro, because in Montenegro there was, let's say, 30 movie theaters. Nowadays it's 2.5. That's the issue. We have 2.5 movie projections. Of course, we have cultural centers, but they are not movie theaters. We have Cineplex, we have campus, and we have this half, I don't know what, it's some kind of...
So actually when it comes to this collaboration with GNIFF, we actually have to pay attention to distribution as well. We were calling authors.
You cannot start to shoot a movie in USA, you cannot get investor money if you don't have distributor's plan. That's so simple.
Yeah.
But this chart shows us some very important things, that you don't have to invest so much money to gain a return of investment. So you can shoot small budget films and hoping that somebody will notice your movie and somebody will get it within.
Actually, when you want to get into co-production with other countries, you must provide distributor during the preparations. It's practically impossible to approach the European funds like Euroimage or Media without having distributor on board at the beginning.
Yes, you have to think about it all the time.
That's why I asked you how much they pay attention to that, because when you want to participate, you really have to have distributor on board before the shooting itself.
For us, shooting movies, it's emotional stuff.
Yes.
For USA, it's
business.
Money stuff. So you can see here as well the biggest money losers within the film industry. You can see, especially this cartoon movie Mulan, that it lost a lot of money. It lost a huge amount of money. You can see some 47 Aroni as an example of the film of huge expectation, but it lost nearly 100 million dollars. So there is a lot of bad investments, and there is a lot of failures in that term. When we speak about the losses, we can really see the money is, they call it the bomb. They call it the failure bomb. It doesn't happen anything. Just when you lost as a studio 100 million euros, it's a huge story. And then there is a recuperation model that I will explain later.
Is there any connection that 12 out of 20 of the big losers during the COVID period?
There is understanding of this period very affecting the production, but the
People didn't go
distribution
to
becomes
the
more
theater,
flexible.
but they didn't go to the theater, and as we heard, United States has a lot of theaters, and a lot of profit comes from distributing in the theaters in the United States. I counted 12.
The major losses happens in those 2 years.
Yes,
You will see
12 out of
2021.
20, 12 out of, which is a huge percentage, because here we're covering a big period of time, and we see the COVID actually, if there wasn't COVID, maybe some of the films wouldn't be in this bad statistic.
Only movie that is outside of this circle of COVID reflection is the Running on the Pole position.
Absolutely.
But that day he was one of the biggest losses.
And maybe Jack and the Giant Slayer
Yes,
as well.
Speaking about the losses, the movie that I really like is John McTiernan and the Third Warrior that we all saw. But he was a huge loss within the returning of the investment. And it lost, let's say, nearly 130 million euros.
Kada pričamo o gubicima 13 radnika koji su svi vidjeli, koji je uspio da izgubi skoro 130 miliona dolara.
So the second example before the COVID was this running movie that we all saw as well.
Drugi primjer pre COVID-a jeste film 47 Linden s Keanu Reevesom.
It lost, let's say, 151 million euros.
Izgubio oko 150 miliona dolara.
And it called colossal box office bomb because the expectation was high. Keanu Reeves is really a big star here.
I nazvali su ga bomba koja je eksplodirala zato što je očekivanje bila velika, zato što je Keanu Reeves velika zvezda.
This stupid movie that I choose, and it's a 7 on the list before the COVID, it's called Saka.
Koji sam izabrao da sjedi na listi pre COVID-a, zove se Sakara.
With Matthew McConaughey.
Sa Matthew McConaughey.
But here you can find the data that there is, let's say, 130 million spent on the production, but 81 million on the distribution. So you understand the quantities of money invested in the distribution. And that means that even good distribution could not make you a box office success.
Možete vidjeti na ovom slajdu kako je potrošen novac, to može značiti da čak i dobra distribucija ne može da učiniti da je uspješno.
So this stupid movie cost around with the distribution money and with the production money cost around, let's say, 250 million euros.
Ovaj film je sve ukupno koštao oko 250 miliona.
And lost around 150 million euros, dollars.
A izgubio je oko 150 hiljada.
So the distribution is a very complex thing. It consists of the different aspects.
Distribucija je veoma kompleksna stvar i sastoji iz više aspekata.
It could include the talents.
Talent,
Very important, the period of the season when the film is projecting.
sezona u kojoj se film prikazuje.
It has the support of the, I explained later, of the big studios.
Podrška studija,
The quality of the story
kvalitet priče
and the loss of the target audience.
i ciljano.
It depends also of major film festivals.
Također zavisi od velikih filmskih festivala.
Because if the movie doesn't have so much money,
Ako film nema dovoljno para,
it could go to the festivals and try to promote it to to be in the focus of some festival,
film onda može da na festival i da tu pokuša
like Sundance and other festivals, and becomes much more important than it actually is.
i postoje biti nego što zapravo jeste.
Of course, one of the strategy is private projection for distribution screening before the festivals.
Također isto strategija privatne projekcije.
But if you don't have a sales agent, which say cost nearly $150 to $2,000.
Ovo sam malo preobjasnio, kopija filma u Americi košta 1000.
And there is approximately 37,000 of the movie theaters in the USA.
Ima u 37.000 bioskopa.
So you have to quantify in which territory of the USA you make a distribution of the movie.
Morate se odlučiti gdje u Americi ćete
And you have to follow the demographic trends.
i pratiti demografiju.
And the timing of the year when to make a distribution.
I vreme godine kada narediti film.
Koliko istraživanje tržišta pomaže u tome priliku distribucije svakog filma? Da li bi produkcija ovako? Is it good for productions to do market research before making a film on
That is a
market?
good question because when you produce the movie in USA, then you sell to the distributors. And the contract that you make is dependent on these four pillars, because then your born child, your everything that you invest in the movie belongs to distributors. And if you make this contract, it's around 10 to 15 years contract. You could not do anything with your movie. Then this movie becomes the distributor's movie. You cannot change anything, you cannot do anything. You just sign the paper.
So actually they do market research and everything that is
They do all the other aspects for you in terms of promoting. Of course, there is a lot of clauses and there is a lot of contract definition that we will go through later. But those terms are around the percentage of the income divided between the investors. It's very important for some model that I will explain. P&A is a very important term in or syntagma in the distribution activities, and this is how the regular blockbusters goes through the stages of the distribution. What are the complementary activities during the film production and then in the distribution? Producers, distributors make gala parties, they make festival appearances, they make trailers and all complementary stuff, and they create what's so-called the film hook. And its film hook is based upon a lot of activities that is done behind. So some movies are made because of the CGI available technology. Some are made especially for the video on demand platforms. Some of them are made just for the festivals of the niche. So the strategy has to be, very
specific at the beginning.
promiscuous.
Specific at the beginning.
Yes. This is the story about audience flow that we have to follow because we have the new terms meaning the flow of the attention as well. Yes. Because during academic year, all the students are within the city. During the summer, you shoot short movies. Because the concentration or the flow of the attention is not the same. Some could make a let's say, so-called four-quadrant movie. Ne nego četvorokvadratni film. A šta je četvorokvadratni film? The fourth quarter movie is the movie based upon the expectation of the audience. consultants in which there is a female and male under or above the 25 years old, and which are the children, female and male, under 25 years of age. That is 400 movie.
Badatelj film je da ispuni očekivanja na publike, da imaju muškaraca i žene koji su preko 25 godine, muškaraca i žene koji su ispod 25.
And for example, Titanic is a movie that fits all the four quadrants.
Naprimjer, Titanic je film koji ispunjava sva 4 godine.
Because you can follow the story when when the guy, the main actor, was young,
A možemo da pratimo priču kada je Jack bio
and
mlad.
when she gets older and the reflection on her life. So it's a four-quadrant movie.
I kada je ona starila i reflektovala se svoj život.
For example, the movie Meet My Parents is the same story because there is a lifespan of the youngsters towards the older.
Naprimjer, film Upoznajmo roditelje je isti zato što imamo cijel život od kad su bili mladi i su ostali.
And there is a universality of the story.
I imamo univerzijalnost dobre priče.
Other strategies consisting of the event film, so-called event film,
Drugi strategije se čine event filmom.
it's usually a blockbuster,
Uglavnom su blockbusteri.
but this kind of movies as Jaws, as the Spider-Man, Avatar, and so on, those are the event movies, meaning that they are announced 1 year previously than the production.
Tako filmovi kao Jaws ili Spider-Man su event filmovi koji se najavljuju godinu dana prije.
So the expectation of the audience and the audience flow is higher than the regular movies.
I onda su očekivanja publike više nego inače.
Because you know that in April you will see the Avatar.
Jer znate da se to prvi pogled jako.
And there are still now today's expectation of us that the second Avatar will happen.
I danas ima očekivanja da se...
What's going on with Avatar? There is no sequel. What's going on? It's something happened to James Cameron. Yeah. This tentpole movies is very important term in the distribution. It is the term that explains the contraction between producers and the distributors.
Tentpole filmovi objašnjavaju centralni stup između producenta i kontributora.
Those kind of movies are created to make a balance between the system of the industry, meaning that if you produce 10 films, only one will make a profit, extra profit. Others will go in average. And then you make a movie which is like tentpole with all the aspects of the umbrella, with all the merchandising and advertising, that this film, with the profit that he made, he could make revenue for the other failures that he's done.
Tentpole u stvari, recimo 10 filmova, jedan od njih će uspjeti, ostali neće, onda da bi se pripomogli film koji je uspio pomoći ostali filmova koji nisu uspjeli.
Or the movies that didn't earn the money.
Ili filmova koji nisu uspjeli.
There is a lot of explanation going behind the tentpole movie in the terms of the quantity of money that is considered to make a tentpole movie, but it's only done by the majors, what we call the majors.
Ima dosta stvari koje stoji iza toga da bi se napravili tentpole filmovi, ali mi samo obraćamo pažnju na glavno.
Because the producers of tent-movie films,
Zato što producenti tentpole filmova,
they could count that in Northern America there is just 20% of the world market.
mogu da računaju da u Severnoj Americi se zapravo nalazi 20% svjetskog marketa.
As you saw on this gross worldwide income, 80% of the other are the expectation from the international markets.
I kao što ste vidjeli, 80% su očekivanje internacionalnog marketa.
And those are the development markets like China, Russia, India, Brazil, international cinematography.
U ovom smislu, što se tiče distribucije, oni imaju svoju dostojanstvu i tako.
And now I'm going towards the end of my presentation in terms that I want to spread with you some thoughts about the complexity of how the American movie is made.
Sada se približamo kraju prezentacije i samo želim samo da podelim moje mišljenje o tome, o komplikovanosti američkih filmova.
Because, for example, $1 Million Baby, it's one very successful movie of the Clint Eastwood. He goes to the Hollywood producer and beg them to give him the money, and they refuse to give him the money for $1 million for $1 Million Baby. He was like, what the hell? What happened? But it happens that he has the money with his Valpasso production. He invested in the film and it was very successful with the Oscar nomination and so on. So it could happen that in these clusters of investors in Hollywood industry, you could not gain support even though if you are doing business. So it's not guaranteed by any means that you will get the money even though you are so huge star. I mean, the icon of the 20th century could not gain the money for the film that was later become very successful.
Recimo film $1 Million Baby, Clint Eastwood je otišao da traži sponzore, da dobio pare, ali nisu dali, tako da je on sam financirao film.
And that's when the participative legislation becomes very important.
I tada
So I will now explain some of the models how to invest in film in USA.
sada ću vam prikazati neke modele kako uložiti u film u Americi.
There is a primary, as we said, investment of the producer.
Ima primarni investicije producenta,
Sole producer is Clint Eastwood with his money.
kao što je Clint Eastwood.
Because there is a golden rule: you never invest your money in the movie. You invest the investor's money in the movie, not yours.
Ima zlatno pravilo, nikad ne uložite svoje pare u film, nego
In European cinema, we invest all our life, especially Naka experience. He invests everything that he has in his movie, and the risk percentage is 20,000 percentage. That's the problem. You never invest your money in movie like Naka do in Europe. So he done the pre-sales. He already sold some seasonal tickets. He already make a video on demand platform. He already booked the placement there. He make a private equity. And he made this model of credits. Equity funding is a special kind of funding in which producers search for the investors. In return, investors gain the proportional income after the project is delivered.
Equity funding je specijalna vrsta uvjerenja filma, zato što nakon filma
How much in the US industry are allowed the stakeholders and investors to influence the story itself? Is it allowed at all? Or they're just professional investors that want stakeholding and that's it?
You know, for example, Hollywood Reporter. It's one kind of magazine, and the cover, you know, or in this publication, within on the 35th of the page. One part of this page it costs like $25,000. Just and we have this offer when we send our Montenegrin national representative on the Oscar. We don't pay this money just for the half of the page in Hollywood. magazines. And that was also the strategy, because the movie is, you know, romantic story, but it has been supported with A-list actors, it has been supported by this publication that is regularly read by the authorities that gave the Oscars. Don't forget that in American Academy of Film Art, there is a 6,000 of people reading Hollywood important. So it's a good strategy, maybe to put your film in focus, which has, and you surpass all of these, let's say, strategies, and use this one.
My question was, does the stakeholders or investors are giving themselves right to change your screenplay at the beginning? Or not?
Yes, that is a very, sometimes they do, sometimes they not, because you know that in American movies there is a happy ending. And even though when Alfred Hitchcock came to this, you know, system, he could not have a final cut. What they do, they gave him a final cut, say, do whatever you want, we'll make a budget for you just to have this artistic approach of yours. But the final ending is ours, is the distributors. Of course, when you saw the movies from the 50s, nowadays you could have this final cut. And that is done by the contract. And everything is precise in this, contractual, you know, because, you know, you have to go out happy with your film that you do. And you have to buy some, I don't know, some additional popcorn and Coca-Cola and so on. Not to be sad after the movie. Because when you see, what I don't like about the Yugoslavian movie, there is a rating of the female. In every Yugoslavian movie there is a rating, I don't know why, but in every I Shoot the Maria Perez movie, there was a 3 rape scene within the movie. I don't know why. But it's a sad story to rape the woman in the movie. You know what is so, I don't know, appealing about it. But Yugoslavian cinematographers, they all the time rape some women in the movies. I don't know why, but it happens. It is some kind of internal dynamics of aesthetics. I don't know why they do. But in every Yugoslavian movie there is some raping. I don't know why. In American movie they try to, you know, use it sometimes when it's really necessary, but not all the time. Let's back to the equity funding, which is like the most common concept of how the movies are created. Yes, the investors has, let's say, the final thoughts. Not, you know, they could not say to the director, do this like in this way, but they could direct, you know, because this project is costed 200 million euros, and they have to ask where the film is like heading. What has happened in the European funding of the movie, that's this debt financing. I have been in BFI in London 3 years ago, and they explained us this kind of, as well, debt financing by the state, by the British Film Institute. This completion bond is very important, for example, for the UK movies, because it gives you so-called waterfall financing, in the terms that in every stage you're supported by the government, you're supported by the funds.
Ovo je kako bih nazvao vodopad financiranja, u svakom segmentu ste podržani strane države.
And in every step there is a completion bond in which when you finish some part of the movie, meaning you finish the half of the movie, then this completion bond gives you the opportunity to follow the other segments of the movie. And this gives you the certainty also overcomes the risks of the films not to be finished. But meaning finished. Finished is when the film is shot, but it's not distributed at all. Because the movie doesn't exist if there is no showing off, there is no distribution. Slave funding or slice financing is introduction towards the participative legislative. They do a lot of movies. They invest in 10 or 20 movies. And they lower the risk of the spectrum of the movies, in which one film could make money for all the rest. It's very complex, but it's functioning as a platform to produce a lot of European cinema. And it is well combined with the public financing of the movie. You can see the stages and all the models how to invest in the movie. One is by funds, some other are using the grants or co-financing, and some using funds within all of the stages you see there for the different part of the movie production. In European cinemas, they also use, especially in Belgium, they use so-called tax shelter. There is a tax relief as well. And there is a cash rebate that we use also in Montenegro. So, we come to the end, speaking about participative legislature in the terms. If we nowadays agree to make a movie, me and Doug, we will invest 50%, you will invest 10%, you will invest 15%, and you will invest 3%. What we are investing is so-called opportunity cost. After we invest in the movie, after everything happens, with this movie, we put it to the distributors, making a contract with him where to distribute the movie. When the movie starts to gain money, or return the opportunity investment that we done, then we spread the profit in the terms how much to invested. And that's not just the model of the movie industry, but the whole system of the culture of USA. And that is called participative legislature, which is very understandable. And we don't use it in European. We don't use it in European context. I don't know why, but we are getting closer to this model every day.
I have just one more question.
So,
before the end, is it possible for you to share with us this your life?
Yeah, I will.
To send us a perfect.
So, I'm sorry to be so, complex about the terms, but those are some of the reflection. What is the movie all about? It's not just about the emotion and wanting to make a movie, because if it stays so, you will stay like Dhaka in Montenegro, investing all your financial capacity in the movie with risky expectation. And Dhaka is not just only the example. We think about movie in these terms. We don't think of it as a market-oriented product. We think about emotional stuff. And that's my problem as well with the students. Think about in market terms. Don't think about in an emotional way. And that's the problem of the negotiation price of the total movie expenditure.
Professor, thank you very much for being guest at GNIFF. We really appreciate your lecture, and I will want you to, like, if you have time to join us for lunch.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So,
Thank you.
so